One HOA decision destroyed the last thing I built with my father, a classic American muscle car. They thought it was about parking rules. They were wrong. This is a story of a U.S. Army veteran targeted by a corrupt homeowners association, harassed for his service, fined illegally, and pushed to the edge. What they didn't know was that I owned something their rules could never control. This isn't just a neighborhood dispute. It's a true story about power, corruption, and what happens when the wrong person is pushed too far. Beverly Walsh cost me more than a car that Tuesday afternoon. She cost me 3 years of memories. Every weekend I'd spent with my father's callous hands teaching mine how to rebuild a carburetor, how to true a chassis, how to bring something broken back to life. The 1969 Camaro SS wasn't just metal and paint. It was the last thing we built together before his heart gave out in that same driveway where her tow truck had just carved fresh scars into the asphalt. I sat in my pickup for 5 minutes after racing home from the grocery store, staring at the empty space where American muscle should have been idling. The black tire marks looked like claw marks, like something had been dragged away against its will, which was exactly what happened. The groceries were melting in the passenger seat. I didn't care. Pine Valley Estates felt wrong that afternoon. Mrs. Patterson's twin boys usually played basketball until dinner, their laughter echoing off the vinyl-sided houses. Today the cul-de-sac sat silent, except for the whisper of curtains moving as neighbors watched from their windows, waiting to see what I'd do, waiting to see if I'd fight back or fall in line, like everyone else who'd tried standing up to Beverly Walsh. Tom Bradley stood on his porch with his wife, arms crossed, watching me with the kind of careful attention you learn in combat zones. He'd driven tanks in Afghanistan. He knew what I'd done before Iron Horse Logistics became my civilian identity. His voice carried just enough when he spoke to his wife. He commanded the entire battalion. Bronze Star for pulling 6 wounded out of burning Bradley under mortar fire. The neighborhood remembered, even if Beverly pretended not to. She emerged from her house at 3:47 p.m. like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. At 52, Beverly Walsh had transformed our quiet neighborhood into her personal fiefdom after her husband Robert's real estate business collapsed 2 years ago. The clipboard never left her side. It was her scepter, her throne, her daily reminder that she controlled something, even if her own life had spiraled into second mortgages and desperate attempts to maintain appearances. "I warned you about that eyesore," she called across the street, voice dripping with satisfaction. "This is a respectable neighborhood. Marcus. We maintain standards here." I climbed out slowly, military training, keeping my face neutral even as rage built behind my ribs. "Where's my car, Beverly?" She consulted her clipboard with theatrical precision. "Towed at 1,400 hours for violation of HOA Regulation 7.3. Her smile could have cut steel. 6 documented warnings. All completely legal. My Bronze Star license plate frame lay in my garbage bin. Coffee grounds stuck to metal that had survived Taliban mortars in Kandahar. 22 years of service reduced to trash on a Tuesday afternoon because Beverly Walsh needed to feel powerful about something in her collapsing life. That car was legally parked on my own property. "Your property ends at the sidewalk." Beverly stepped closer, sensing weakness she could exploit. That vehicle was destroying our community aesthetic, just like that inappropriate flag display and those oversized military decorations. She gestured at my house with genuine disgust. Constant reminders that you think service makes you special. The neighborhood went completely silent. Even the birds stopped chirping. Beverly pressed her advantage, voice dropping to make this personal. "Military people always think rules don't apply to them. But this isn't some foreign battlefield where you can do whatever you want. This is my neighborhood, and you'll follow my rules." In Iraq, I'd learned to read enemy positions before engaging. Beverly had just revealed everything. Her contempt, her insecurity, her complete ignorance about who she was actually dealing with. I glanced toward my closed garage where something weighing 25 tons waited in climate-controlled darkness. Beverly followed my gaze but saw only another potential violation. She had no idea what really lived behind that steel door. No idea why a former tank battalion commander might keep certain pieces of military history for special occasions. "I've been tracking your violations for months," she continued, emboldened by my silence. Grass height, garbage bin positioning, flag size regulations. Daily fines start tomorrow. $200 until you achieve full compliance. She turned to leave, then delivered her final insult over her shoulder. Next time you want to play soldier, do it somewhere that appreciates military theatrics. Real Americans don't need to advertise their service. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Real Americans. I'd pulled burning soldiers from destroyed vehicles while mortars fell around us. I'd earned my Bronze Star leading men through hell and bringing them home alive. And this woman questioned my patriotism over an HOA violation because her own life had fallen apart and she needed someone to control. Tom Bradley caught my eye and gave a small nod before disappearing inside. Acknowledgement from someone who understood what those 22 years actually meant. I retrieved my Bronze Star frame from the garbage, brushing off debris. The metal felt solid and familiar, a reminder of battles won through patience, planning, and overwhelming force applied at exactly the right moment. The Camaro had been about the past. Memories of working beside my father, restoring something beautiful together, creating something that would outlast us both. But what waited in my garage represented something different entirely. 25 tons of American steel that no HOA regulation had ever contemplated. Fully legal and registered as historical military equipment under federal preservation programs that superseded every petty local ordinance Beverly Walsh could imagine. She thought she'd won today's battle by having my car towed. What she'd actually done was declare war on someone who understood strategy, patience, and the devastating effectiveness of superior firepower deployed at the perfect moment. She didn't know it yet, but she just picked a fight with someone who'd won much bigger battles than this. Someone who knew that the most effective weapons aren't always the ones that make the loudest noise. Sometimes they're the ones your enemy never sees coming. The intelligence gathering. The war began at 6:37 a.m. the next morning, while I was drinking coffee on my front porch, watching sunrise paint Pine Valley Estates in shades of gold. My phone buzzed with the first casualty report, a screenshot from our neighborhood Facebook group posted by Beverly at 6:15 a.m. sharp. Urgent. Problem resident continues refusing HOA compliance despite multiple warnings. This affects all our property values. Community action may be necessary. The post already had 12 reactions, mostly angry faces, and concerned comments from people who'd probably never exchanged more than a wave with me. Beverly had turned my car situation into a neighborhood crisis overnight, painting herself as a defender of property values against my alleged rebellion. I screenshot everything. 22 years in the military taught me the value of documentation. Beverly was about to learn that lesson the hard way. By 8 a.m., she'd escalated beyond social media warfare. The first citation appeared taped to my mailbox. Violation notice. Grass height exceeds community standard by 1.25 inches. Daily fine $200 until corrected. I measure my lawn with a ruler. 2.3 inches exactly. Well within the HOA bylaws that specify grass maintained between 2 to 4 inches in height. Beverly was manufacturing violations from thin air. The second citation appeared on my garbage bins. Improper waste container positioning. Bins must be placed exactly 18 inches from curb, parallel to street. I measured again. 17.75 inches. Perfectly parallel. Another fabricated violation with photographic evidence proving my compliance. 5 more citations appeared throughout the day. Mailbox angle. Doormat placement. Garden hose positioning. Even the direction my outdoor chairs faced. Beverly was manufacturing violations faster than I could document them, each carrying the same $200 daily fine threat. Her desperation was creating a systematic harassment campaign that would have been impressive if it weren't so obviously illegal. But she was also creating a paper trail of misconduct that invalidated her entire authority. The community response split exactly as expected. Tom Bradley nodded supportively when he saw me photographing citations. Mrs. Patterson brought homemade cookies with a quiet, "Stay strong," that told me where veteran families stood. But newer families like the Johnsons avoided eye contact entirely. Beverly's social media campaign was working on their fears about property values and neighborhood stability. Time to research my enemy. The Pine Valley Estate's HOA bylaws made fascinating reading when you understood military intelligence gathering. Section 12 clearly outlined enforcement procedures, written warnings with specific violation descriptions, mandatory 30-day response periods, board review before any financial penalties. Beverly had violated every procedure requirement when she had my car towed, creating a paper trail of misconduct that invalidated her entire authority. But the real intelligence gold mine came from public records. County clerk files showed that Beverly's husband Robert had lost his real estate license 18 months ago after multiple client complaints about misrepresented property conditions. Their house carried a second mortgage taken out 8 months ago for $67,000. Financial pressure that explained Beverly's desperate obsession with property values and her need to demonstrate control over something in her collapsing life. Most damaging of all, HOA meeting minutes archived on our community website revealed that 3 months ago, Beverly had unilaterally approved a $5,000 landscaping contract for her brother-in-law's company without competitive bidding or board approval, directly violating the same financial oversight requirements she now claimed to enforce so religiously against residents. Beverly Walsh was running a corrupt, procedurally violative HOA operation while fabricating violations against residents who challenged her authority. In military terms, she was operating outside her own rules of engagement while demanding strict adherence from everyone else. That afternoon, she made her next tactical error. I was checking my mail when Beverly approached from across the street, clipboard in hand and fire in her eyes. The confrontation felt inevitable, like enemy contact you could sense coming long before visual confirmation. "You think being a veteran makes you untouchable?" she snapped, positioning herself between me and my front door like she owned the sidewalk. "I've dealt with your type before. Military people who think they can ignore civilian authority." The entire community was watching now. Tom Bradley stood on his lawn pretending to water plants while obviously listening. Mrs. Patterson had emerged to collect mail she'd already retrieved that morning. The Johnson family peered through their living room curtains. Beverly's decision to make this confrontation public had just raised the stakes from private harassment to neighborhood spectacle, and she was too angry to realize a tactical disadvantage. "What type is that, Beverly?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice level and reasonable for the audience. "Entitled, arrogant, acting like rules don't apply because you wore a uniform." She stepped closer, trying to use physical intimidation in full view of witnesses. "This is civilian territory, Marcus. Your military rank means absolutely nothing here. I make the rules, and you're going to follow them or face the consequences." The irony was perfect. Beverly was lecturing me about following rules while violating every procedure requirement in her own HOA bylaws. But her public display had just fundamentally shifted the entire dynamic. This was no longer about citations or car towing or even harassment. This was about who controlled Pine Valley Estates. And she just declared total war in front of half the neighborhood. "I'm familiar with following rules," I said calmly. "The question is whether you are." Her face flushed deep red. "I am the rules in this neighborhood. Every citation, every fine, every enforcement decision goes through me. And you're going to learn that the hard way starting tomorrow, when your fines double for noncompliance." She turned and stomped back to her house, leaving me with absolute clarity about my next strategic move. Beverly had just escalated beyond harassment into something that resembled a hostile takeover attempt, complete with threats of financial punishment for resistance. That evening, I compiled my counteroffensive research. Federal housing protections existed for veterans facing discrimination based on military status. Beverly's public comments about my service created a clear, documented pattern of bias. Her procedural violations during my car towing provided grounds for challenging her authority through proper channels. Her financial misconduct gave the HOA board legal cause to remove her from office entirely. But defensive measures wouldn't end this war. I needed superior firepower, legally speaking. My research into military vehicle regulations revealed something Beverly's narrow civilian worldview couldn't possibly anticipate. The Department of Defense Surplus Program allowed qualified veterans to purchase decommissioned military vehicles for historical preservation purposes with proper federal licensing, insurance, and registration. These vehicles became legal civilian property, subject to federal rather than local regulations. My garage currently houses exactly such a vehicle, a 1960 M60 Patton tank, fully decommissioned and registered as historical military equipment. 25 tons of American steel that I'd acquired 3 years ago for veteran memorial events and educational demonstrations. Beverly's HOA bylaws meticulously regulated passenger vehicles, trucks, motorcycles, and recreational vehicles. They said absolutely nothing about historical military equipment because suburban developers never imagined needing such provisions. I had found the perfect legal weapon to end Beverly's tyrannical reign while staying completely within federal law. If she wanted to play by rules, I was about to teach her what real rules looked like. The strategic deployment. The real war began in my home office at 0500 hours the next morning. While Beverly slept off her belief that she'd won yesterday's confrontation, I was already building the intelligence file that would end her reign of suburban tyranny. Federal military surplus regulations proved fascinating reading. Qualified veterans could purchase decommissioned equipment for historical preservation and memorial activities, with federal law superseding local ordinances for such vehicles. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison, my former platoon sergeant who now ran a military surplus dealership in Nevada. Marcus, that M60 you've been storing is ready for transport whenever you need it. All federal permits current. Insurance paid through next year. Just say when. The M60 Patton tank sitting in climate control storage 300 miles away wasn't just a vehicle. It was a memorial. I'd purchased it 3 years ago after attending too many funerals for brothers who didn't make it home. The tank bore the same designation as the one I commanded in Iraq, where Sergeant Danny Patterson, Mrs. Patterson's nephew, had died pulling wounded soldiers from a burning Bradley under mortar fire. 25 tons of American steel that represented every fallen comrade Beverly Walsh had just insulted when she questioned my patriotism. By 0700, Beverly launched her counterattack. The noise complaint arrived via certified mail. Excessive commercial vehicle activity, disturbing residential peace. Iron Horse Logistics operates illegally from residential address. Complete fabrication. I ran a consulting business from my home office with zero vehicle traffic. But Beverly had found neighbors willing to sign affidavits supporting her claims. The Johnsons had signed, probably terrified of Beverly's retaliation. So had the new couple on Maple Street who knew nothing about the actual situation. Fear was Beverly's most effective weapon. The threat of harassment that made good people choose compliance over justice. Her next move revealed true desperation. Legal notice. Property lien filing for accumulated HOA violations totaling $4,600. Payment required within 30 days, or foreclosure proceedings will commence. She was threatening to steal my house over fabricated citations, using intimidation tactics that had no legal foundation, but might scare someone who didn't understand the system. That's when I decided to go nuclear. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. in the community center, a monthly gathering that usually attracted 5 residents and lasted 20 minutes. Tonight would be different. I spent the afternoon preparing a presentation that would expose Beverly's misconduct in front of witnesses and create an official record of her violations. The community center buzzed with unusual energy when I arrived. Word had spread about the conflict, and nearly 30 residents filled chairs that usually sat empty. Beverly presided from a head table, like a queen holding court, clipboard positioned for maximum authority display. First order business, she announced with theatrical formality, addressing the ongoing compliance issues with property at 1522 Pine Valley Drive. Actually, I interrupted, standing with manila folder thick with evidence. I'd like to present information about procedural violations that invalidate those compliance actions. The room went silent. Beverly's face flushed red, but she couldn't refuse without looking tyrannical in front of the entire community. I methodically summarized the HOA bylaw violations. No proper warnings issued. No response periods provided. No board approval for enforcement actions. Then I moved to the real ammunition. There's also the matter of unauthorized financial decisions requiring investigation. I distributed copies of meeting minutes from 3 months ago. A $5,000 landscaping contract approved without competitive bidding or board vote. Paid to a company owned by Beverly's brother-in-law. Board member Patricia Wells studied the documents with growing alarm. Beverly, this shows you signed this contract unilaterally. It was an emergency repair, Beverly stammered. For decorative landscaping? I asked. The invoices show ornamental plants and aesthetic improvements, not emergency repairs. The board looked stunned. Beverly's financial misconduct was documented in their own meeting minutes, and they were just now realizing the implications. Residents whispered in shocked tones as they processed a revelation that their HOA president had been operating outside her authority for months. That's when I delivered the killing blow. The landscaping fund shows a $3,000 discrepancy, I announced, consulting financial records I requested under HOA transparency rules. $5,000 approved, $8,000 actually paid. The additional $3,000 came from general reserves without board authorization. Beverly's face went white. The room erupted in concerned voices as residents realized her HOA president had potentially embezzled community funds to cover unauthorized expenses. Patricia Wells frantically shuffled through her copies, confirming the numbers with visible distress. This meeting is adjourned pending emergency financial audit and procedural review, she announced, voice shaking. As residents filed out discussing Beverly's misconduct in shocked tones, I felt the first taste of real victory. Beverly's authority was crumbling in real time, her financial crimes exposed before the entire community. But this was just the opening battle. Beverly cornered me in the parking lot afterward, her composure finally cracking completely. You think you're so smart with your little investigation? I know about your military contracts, your government connections. One phone call to the right people and your precious company disappears. Is that a threat, Beverly? It's a promise. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I've destroyed bigger men than you. But she was wrong. I knew exactly what I was dealing with. A desperate woman who'd overplayed her hand and was about to face consequences she couldn't imagine. Her threats were empty bluster from someone watching her kingdom collapse. Walking back to my house under the streetlights, I pulled out my phone and texted Jake Morrison. Time to bring Thunder home. Scheduled transport for this weekend. Beverly Walsh thought she'd seen my best cards tonight. The procedural violations, the financial misconduct, the community exposure. She thought those were my only weapons in this war. She had no idea what was coming. Thunder rolls home. The drive to Nevada took 6 hours, but I needed to see Thunder with my own eyes before bringing her home. Jake Morrison's surplus facility sat on 40 acres of desert outside Las Vegas. Rows of decommissioned military vehicles baking under relentless sun. Humvees, personnel carriers, artillery pieces, even a few Cold War-era tanks. The graveyard of American military might, all waiting for new purposes in civilian hands. Thunder waited in the climate-controlled warehouse, exactly as I'd left her 3 years ago. 25 tons of M60 patent tank, olive drab paint still pristine. Treads that had never touched foreign soil but carried the same spirit as the ones that had. I ran my hand along the armor plating, remembering the weight of command, the responsibility of bringing soldiers home alive. This wasn't just a vehicle. It was a memorial to Sergeant Mike Thunder Patterson, who died saving 3 wounded soldiers from an IED blast outside Kandahar, and to every brother who hadn't made it back. Beverly Walsh had no right to dishonor that sacrifice with her petty suburban tyranny. She's been waiting for you, Jake said quietly, understanding the moment's significance. All maintenance current. Federal registration updated. Insurance policy covers transport and storage. I climbed into the commander's position, feeling the familiar weight of memories and responsibility. Any potential legal challenges? Hard to say. Most HOAs have never dealt with military equipment. The federal registration gives you solid ground, but local ordinances can create complications. Could go either way if they really push it. What about transport logistics? Special permit required, but that's standard. Heavy haul truck can handle the weight. Route's been cleared with state DOT. Biggest risk is if your HOA tries some kind of emergency injunction while she's in transit. I spent another hour reviewing Thunder's documentation, ensuring every permit was current. every certification valid. The federal historical vehicle registration was solid, but Jake's warnings about HOA creativity stuck with me. Beverly had already proven adept at finding new ways to attack. While I was in Nevada securing my strategic advantage, Beverly was launching her most desperate offensive yet. The restraining order arrived via process served the moment I returned home. Emergency petition for protection. Respondent has threatened petitioner with military weapons and equipment, creating imminent danger to community safety. Complete fabrication, but potentially dangerous if a judge believed her victim narrative. The court hearing was scheduled for the next morning. Beverly's attempt to use the legal system for harassment, but also a genuine threat that could derail everything I planned. My lawyer, David Carter, met me at the courthouse with cautious optimism tempered by realism. The good news is her claims are obviously false. The bad news is restraining orders have a low evidence threshold. Judges err on the side of caution, especially when military equipment gets mentioned. What's our strategy? Document her harassment pattern. Show this as retaliation for exposing her misconduct. But Marcus, if she convinces a judge you're genuinely dangerous, this could backfire completely. She could get an order preventing you from bringing any military equipment near the neighborhood. The stakes were higher than I'd realize. Beverly wasn't just trying to harass me. She was attempting to neutralize my most powerful legal weapon before I could deploy it. Judge Patricia Morrison presided over the hearing with stern professionalism that reminded me of military tribunals. Beverly sat across the courtroom with her attorney, looking more confident than she had any right to be. Petitioner claims respondent threatened her with military weapons. Judge Morrison began. Consultant petition. Present your evidence. Beverly's attorney presented his case methodically. Your Honor, Mr. Chin explicitly stated he possessed military equipment that my client couldn't touch. Given his background and recent hostile behavior toward my client, she reasonably fears for her safety and that of the community. The exact words were what? Judge Morrison asked. Beverly leaned forward, playing her victim role perfectly. He said he had something I couldn't touch legally, then mentioned 25 tons. Given the context of our dispute and his military background, it felt like a clear threat of violence. Judge Morrison made notes, her expression unreadable. Mr. Chun, did you make statements about military equipment? The question felt like stepping into a minefield. I mentioned having legal property she couldn't interfere with. Your Honor, no threats of violence were made or implied. But you do possess military equipment? I own a decommissioned tank registered for historical purposes, yes. The admission seemed to shift the room's energy. Beverly's attorney seized the opportunity. Your Honor, bringing military weaponry into a residential dispute represents dangerous escalation that endangers the entire community. David rose for my defense, presenting our evidence of Beverly's systematic harassment. Your Honor, this petition represents continued retaliation against my client for exposing documented financial misconduct. Mrs. Walsh is engaged in a pattern of abuse, including fabricated violations and threats of property liens. But Judge Morrison's attention kept returning to the tank issue. Mr. Chun, explain the purpose of owning military equipment in a residential neighborhood. It's used for veteran memorial events and educational demonstrations. Your Honor, fully legal under federal historical preservation programs. The financial misconduct allegations are separate matters. Judge Morrison stated firmly, my immediate concern is preventing this dispute from escalating into something dangerous for the community. After 30 minutes of arguments and cross-examination, the judge reached her decision. Petition for restraining order is dismissed due to insufficient evidence of immediate threat. However, given the volatile nature of this dispute and the presence of military equipment, I'm issuing a mutual stay-away order. Both parties will avoid all contact except through legal channels. Not the complete victory I'd hoped for. Beverly actually looked satisfied with the mutual restriction. It limited my ability to expose her misconduct publicly while giving her legal protection from direct confrontation. Walking out of the courthouse, David was blunt about the implications. That could have gone much worse, but she's not finished. The mutual order actually helps her more than you. She can continue her HOA actions while claiming judicial protection. The community response after news of the hearing spread was notably mixed. Mrs. Patterson posted careful support. We should all respect our veterans, but legal matters should stay in court where they belong. Measured words. Not the ringing endorsement I'd expected. Some neighbors began questioning Beverly's methods, but quietly and without commitment. Ellie Johnson mentioned in passing that maybe there are two sides of the story, but wouldn't make public statements. The tank issue had introduced genuine uncertainty. People weren't sure what to think about military equipment entering their peaceful neighborhood. Local veteran groups expressed interest, but carefully avoided taking sides. The VFW post commander called to offer moral support, while noting they couldn't officially take positions in ongoing legal disputes. That evening, Jake Morrison called with final transport confirmation, but his tone carried warnings. Marcus, bringing Thunder into an active legal dispute could complicate things significantly. You absolutely sure about this timing? It's legal property, properly registered under federal law. Legal and smart aren't always the same thing, brother. That judge seemed concerned about escalation. I stood in my driveway that night, knowing Beverly was probably watching from her window, planning her next move. Tomorrow would bring 25 tons of American steel to Pine Valley Estates, and neither of us knew exactly how that confrontation would unfold. The HOA bylaws didn't mention historical military vehicles, which created a gray area rather than clear protection. Beverly might not have direct authority over Thunder, but she'd already proven remarkably creative at finding new angles of attack. She'd lost a day's legal skirmish, but she wasn't defeated. The mutual stay-away order had actually given her breathing room to plan her next offensive. Tomorrow, Thunder comes home. Whether Beverly Walsh could stop it remained to be seen. The arrival, 0600 hours. Transport day. The call from Jake Morrison woke me before my alarm. Heavy haul trucks loaded and rolling. Thunder should arrive at your location by 0800. You ready for this? I stood at my bedroom window, watching Beverly's house across the street. Her living room light had been on since 5 a.m. She knew something was coming. Ready as I'll ever be. Marcus, once that tank hits your driveway, there's no going back. You sure about this play? It's time. By 0630, I was coordinated with the transport crew at their staging area 5 miles outside Pine Valley Estates. The heavy haul truck stretched 60 feet long, specialized trailer designed to carry industrial equipment weighing up to 40 tons. Thunder sat secured on the flatbed like a sleeping giant. 25 tons of American steel covered by military tarps that did nothing to hide her distinctive profile. Federal permits? I asked the lead driver, a grizzled veteran named Sam Torres who transported military equipment for 20 years. All current. DOT clearance, oversized load permits, insurance documentation. Sam handed me a thick folder. Route's been cleared with state police. Only potential issue is local interference, but there's no legal basis to stop us unless someone gets creative. I reviewed every document twice. Federal historical vehicle registration, insurance certificates, transport permits, maintenance records showing Thunder's weapon systems have been properly decommissioned, everything documented, everything legal, everything Beverly Walsh would struggle to challenge. By 0715, Beverly had discovered the transport plans. Her Facebook post appeared like a call to arms. Emergency. Military weapons being transported into our community today. Children at risk. Call police, city council, anyone who can stop this invasion. Comments exploded within minutes. Concerned parents. Confused neighbors. Veteran supporters try and provide context. Beverly was rallying every authority figure she could think of, painting this as a community emergency that required immediate intervention. She positioned supporters strategically around the cul-de-sac. The Johnsons stood on their front lawn with phones ready. 2 other families had gathered near the street entrance, probably hoping to block access, if necessary. Beverly appeared at her front window at 0730. Phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly. I could see her mouth moving rapidly as she made her emergency calls. She's really going all out, Sam observed, watching the growing crowd. You sure this is worth the drama? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Chief Williams. Marcus, I'm getting emergency calls about military weapons being transported to your address. What's the situation? Historical military vehicle, Chief. All permits in order. I need to review the paperwork before that truck enters the neighborhood. 15 minutes later, Chief Williams arrived at the staging area, looking like a man who'd rather be handling routine traffic stops. He reviewed every document with professional thoroughness, checking permit numbers against federal databases on his laptop. Documentation appears legitimate. He confirmed finally, I don't see a current legal basis to prevent this transport, but I'll need to be present during delivery to monitor the situation. What about Beverly's emergency claims? She's reporting imminent community danger. I have to respond. But the paperwork supports your position. Chief Williams escorted our convoy toward Pine Valley Estates, his patrol car providing official presence against whatever Beverly might attempt. The total weight, truck, trailer, and tank created noticeable vibrations as we approached the neighborhood. Word had spread throughout the subdivision. Veteran families had quietly gathered, their anticipation barely contained. Mr. Peterson, who'd served in Korea, stood with his grandson on their front lawn. Mrs. Patterson waited on her porch holding a small American flag, but other neighbors looked genuinely concerned. Young families with small children clustered together, uncertain about military equipment entering their quiet suburban world. The unknown was always unsettling, especially when it involved tanks. Beverly had transformed her living room window into a command center, phone still pressed to her ear as she broadcast live on Facebook. She was narrating the approach of what she called weapons of war entering their peaceful family neighborhood, attracting viewers from across the state. The ground vibrations increased as our convoy turned onto Pine Valley Drive. Windows opened throughout the neighborhood. Phones appeared, ready to record. Kids pressed against glass with excitement or fear. The entire community held its breath as 40 tons of military transport navigated residential streets, designed for minivans and delivery trucks. Sam Torres maneuvered the heavy-haul truck through the subdivision with expert precision, but the sheer scale created surreal drama. Equipment designed for warfare moving through a landscape of mailboxes and garden sprinklers. Your driveway is reinforced for 25 tons. Sam asked, study my property. Had it checked last week. Should handle the weight. Local news trucks were racing toward our location. Beverly's Facebook broadcast was drawing hundreds of viewers, comments flooding in from strangers offering opinions about military equipment in residential neighborhoods. The crowd continued growing as word spread through Pine Valley Estates. Some brought folding chairs, treating this like community entertainment. Others looked ready to evacuate if things went wrong. At 0755, Chief Williams positioned his patrol car near my driveway. Marcus, you got media incoming and 50 neighbors watching. This is about to become very public. Beverly's window was now crowded with supporters, all recording and broadcasting. She held a handwritten sign, protect our children from military weapons. At 0759, the low rumble of Thunder's transport reached a final turn. Ground vibrations became unmistakable. Car alarms triggered throughout the subdivision. Dogs barked in response to the seismic waves. Beverly stood at her window with absolute confidence, surrounded by supporters. Phone recording, ready to capture what she believed would be my downfall and her vindication. The heavy-haul truck rounded the corner onto my street, its massive profile filling the entire roadway. Neighbors pressed closer, phones raised, voices rising in excitement and concern. Thunder's outline was unmistakable beneath the tarps. Angular, massive, undeniably military. 25 tons of American steel about to make its entrance into suburban warfare. The truck began its final approach to my driveway. The heavy-haul truck turned onto my street at exactly 0800 hours, and Pine Valley Estates would never be the same. The reckoning. Sam Torres navigated the 60-foot transport with surgical precision, but nothing could minimize the overwhelming presence of what rode on that trailer, even covered by military tarps. Thunder's profile dominated the residential landscape like a prehistoric creature emerging from another world. The ground vibrations intensified with each rotation of the truck's massive wheels. Car windows rattled in their frames. The Patterson family's wind chimes created an eerie symphony as seismic waves traveled to the subdivision's foundation. "Jesus Christ," whispered Tom Bradley, standing on his front lawn with his wife and 2 kids. That's actually happening. Beverly's live Facebook stream captured her confident commentary. "Here comes the illegal military equipment. Watch how quickly the authorities shut this down when they see what he's really trying to bring into our neighborhood." She had no idea what she was about to witness. The transport truck positioned itself in front of my driveway, air brakes hissing like an enormous beast settling into position. Sam and his crew moved with practiced efficiency, stabilizing the trailer and preparing a hydraulic unloading system. "Crowd's getting pretty thick," Sam observed, noting the 60-plus neighbors who gathered along both sides of the street. "You ready for this show?" I nodded, watching the mixture of anticipation and anxiety on faces throughout the community. Veteran families stood with quiet pride. Young parents clutched their children closer. Beverly supporters held their phones high, ready to document what they expected to be my public humiliation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sam announced to the crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone who performed this ritual dozens of times, "we're about to unload a piece of American military history. Please maintain safe distance." The hydraulic systems engaged a mechanical whine that silenced every conversation on Pine Valley Drive. Thunder's tarp-covered form began rising slowly from the trailer bed, revealing glimpses of olive drab paint and angular armor plating. The crowd pressed closer, phones recording, children pointing in wonder and fear. Beverly's stream continued. "They can't legally bring weapons into a residential neighborhood. The police will stop this immediately." But Chief Williams stood beside his patrol car, reviewing my documentation with careful attention to detail. No urgency, just clear focus on ensuring everything was properly handled. The tarps came off like curtains revealing a stage. 25 tons of M60 Patton tank sat fully exposed on a hydraulic lift, afternoon sunlight gleaming off a restored armor plating. The main gun, completely decommissioned, pointed skyward at a safe angle. Stars and stripes decals marker as American military equipment. Registration numbers were clearly visible on her front slope. The crowd went completely silent for 10 full seconds while residents processed what they were seeing. A genuine military tank in their neighborhood on a Tuesday afternoon.